This is a candlestick chart of Tesla stock, but what if I told you that we could see beyond these candlesticks, beyond the reds, the greens, or whatever colors you choose as your candlesticks to get a better depiction or a better idea of what's going on under the surface, key levels, liquidity, buyers, sellers, etc. Well, that is what Bookmap is all about. In today's video, we're going to be going over a beginner's guide to Bookmap, and I want to dive deeper into this so that you have a really good understanding of what you've got with Bookmap, if it's something that you're thinking about or it's something that you have recently subscribed to or recently started using and want a better understanding of how it all works, because it's kind of confusing, especially if you are new to the trading space. Now, Bookmap's value to you, to me, is it allows you to see beyond the candlesticks. They even say it right here. Check what candlesticks are hiding. So you can kind of see on the slider across the top that we were looking at a chart like that. And then when you look at Bookmap, that's what you're going to see. And it might blow your mind and be like, oh my gosh, that's so confusing. But it really doesn't have to be. And then once you understand it, it actually is really helpful in allowing you to see price action in a different way. And I know for me that once I started using this, things made a lot more sense. We're going to dive on into it here in a second. I'm going to pull up my Bookmap platform and go through a lot of what Bookmap has to offer. We're not going to be able to cover everything here in this video, but what I will do is I will leave a link below this video, not only to Bookmap, but also to this section of Bookmap called the knowledge base. Now, the Bookmap knowledge base you can get on from the website, but I'll just leave a link down below so you can easily access it. This is your, like, if you have a question and we didn't cover something, or you're like, I'm kind of confused on this, there's a good chance that your answer could be here. So when it comes to registering, setting up, license key, all of that stuff, I don't want to bore you and waste your time. That is a piece of Bookmap, and it did take me, a few moments to figure out, but they literally have it under section 2, getting started. They literally have step-by-step all of that. So connecting to a data source, subscribing to an instrument. So for example, we're going to look at a stock, but you can subscribe to pretty much whatever you'd like depending upon the platform. And they're going to have even videos on this. So they've got tutorial videos. They've got everything. They have done a really good job, I think, from a platform perspective of providing a ton of educational or information just so that you understand like what you're doing or how to get to something. Because, I mean, for me, even as someone who has been in the space for a couple of years now, like when I first opened Bookmap, without opening up this page, I was kind of like, this is like almost too much. You know what I mean? This is a lot. Like, what even is this? And so I was like very confused, but this goes very, very step by step through it. So if you have any questions, refer to the link in the video description box that takes you to this page, and it will walk you through like pretty much step by step the basics. Now, the point of this video is that we can dive a little bit deeper into how to use, what it is, what we're looking at, all that different stuff, kind of interpretive stuff, versus like the bare bones setting things up and like what's the chart and how do you pull up this on the chart, okay? So I've now got a Bookmap window pulled up, okay? And I'm using, the data that I'm getting is through DX feed, so I'm looking at Tesla in this case. A lot of people like to look at futures. I personally trade a lot more stocks than I do futures, although I do trade futures from time to time, depending upon the chart setups that are there. But this is Tesla. So right away, probably looks confusing, but we're going to get into it. I'm going to pull myself off the screen so we have a full page to look at. At the top of my screen, we have a bunch of different stocks that I will look at and potentially trade on a given day, but you may not see anything here when you first open up your layout. So I'm going to go over to where it says the plus sign and add an instrument. From here, I am going to be going through DX feed as the platform, and then I'm going to simply just type in the ticker symbol. So if I wanted to look at, let's look at a stock that is interesting. Let's look at Adobe, ADBE, Adobe. Pull it up, type in the ticker symbol, and now I can add historical data. So I'm going to go back the past 3 hours. So we're good there. And I'm going to have everything else set to auto. So I'm going to click on subscribe to Adobe. Now Adobe is going to pop up. It's loading historical data for Adobe. Now it's right here. I open up that tab, give it a minute to load up, and now it's loaded up. It can take a minute. I will tell you that if you're running a lot of programs, it could be on your computer. This could take up a good amount of space. So you just need to make sure you're aware of that and you at least plan for that when running Bookmap. So now I've got Adobe pulled up, and that's an example of how we can overlay an additional stock or chart or whatever I want to look up. So I'm gonna go back to Tesla because I like looking at Tesla. That was the example we looked at in the beginning of the video. Let's kind of cover the basics of what's up in the top left, and then we'll kind of work down through the charts. Okay, so once we add a chart, there's a lot of customizations that we have the ability to do. We have this option to zoom and drag. So we can click on that and we can now zoom in to a specific point on the chart. I can scroll back out with my mouse, and then I can zoom back in on a selected section if I wanted to with the zoom and drag feature. Pretty cool feature, something that I really didn't realize was even an option. Maybe isn't necessary, but something that you have the option to use. We also have this, creates a screenshot section right here. Click on that, post chart to Twitter, Facebook, copy link, or just save it. Something that's pretty nice because a lot of times doing the screenshots yourself, it could be a pain. If I click on save chart image, boom, we now have this. I can set it to where I need to set it and I'm good to go. And it just takes a screenshot of the page. Cool. The next piece is studies configuration. We'll come back to this here in a second, but here's where we can kind of configure other pieces to this. And I don't want to get too caught up in this just yet. So we'll come back to that in 1 second. The next piece beyond that is configure any add-ons, which you have the options to do. We can also cover those here in a minute. Towards the end of the video. Synchronize charts if I have multiple charts up or whatever. Then we have this drawing tool if we wanted to add lines and text and whatnot, which we can do to mark up our charts, clear drawings, all of that. We have the show data tool tip, which if you notice, when I don't select it and I have the crosshair, which is this guy right here, selected, this is all I see. If I click on that, I could start to see more information at each of these price points at each time on Tesla, which is kind of cool. The bid, the ask, etc., which could be nice to see and could be good information and good data to look back on. Then we have this time slices. So we can now go back and look at a 60-minute time slice. It depends upon your window of view and what your time horizon is. Let's go to, let's say, a 1 minute. I can literally look back over the past minute or a minute span. So then you can zoom back out, but it's kind of cool. You can change the time slice right there. Then we have the configure visible components. So we can have the best bid and ask, the break-even point, candlestick bars. If I click on that, you'll see candlesticks popping up on the chart. I know that's a lot going on. Heat map, last price strength, VWAP, volume weighted average price could be nice to have. I actually might just add that and leave it on there. Volume bars, which are at the bottom of our screen. And then, volume dots are the dots that we see in the middle of our screen. So that's that. And then we have this right here, which is the trade control panel on the left-hand side. If you are trading through Bookmap, which I personally do not do, but you have the ability to do so and connect that. Again, I would refer back to the knowledge base link to see more about this if this is something you're interested in doing. For me, I like to have this pulled up on a secondary screen, trade on my brokerage platform on my main screen, and then I have this to refer back to just like I look at any other charts. So that is across the top, the basics. Now, if I go over to this drop down, we have the option to change the colors. So I can change this to where the darks show low liquidity and the lights, the brights, show high liquidity if I want to do that. Or I can change it back to what we had pretty much before with the normal colors. We'll get into liquidity here in just 1 second. Then this bar underneath that is gonna dim the heat map. Okay, so it dims the heat map, which is the colors behind our volume dots. It's gonna dim that or make it very bright. For me, that's fine. I like to keep it bright and look at some nice cool colors. So that is basically the top bar of the Bookmap page. Is like right there, boom. There's also the option to upgrade right away in the feedback at the top right. Consider those if you've got questions, feedback, or concerns, or things that you want to change or you'd like to see improved. Under here, file, create a new workspace, save one, etc. We can set alerts, do a lot of things here. If I want to make a new workspace, let's create a new workspace, and I'll show you kind of what happens. Now we're not connected to any platform. I have to configure and select a platform that I want to do in the connections menu. So I go up in here. I'm going to go over where it says DX feed real time, click on the plus, and now I can go back and add Adobe, add whatever stocks that I want to add, and I can just like that pop myself right back to where I was. Let me go back over here and I'll go to Tesla and show you guys how that works. Really simple and straightforward. Tesla auto. I'm going to go back. I want to load past 3 hours. Subscribe and give it a second and it will load up for Tesla. Okay, so now we're back to kind of what we were looking at before. In the settings section, we have color settings, configurations, and there's more here. A lot of it is somewhat self-explanatory, like time zones, etc. But color settings could be something that I want to do. Plenty of customizations here when we can customize colors for buyers, sellers, anything we really want. Like all the different features and the layers of the chart we have on Bookmap, you can change those colors, which is kind of cool. Now let's get back to that studies configuration section up in the top left. So right now, I have it configured in a way where here is what shows up. But now if I wanted to look at, let's say we're looking at Tesla, right? So if I wanted to look at 2D dots instead of 3D volume dots, I can do that. 3D volume dots, or bubbles, I should say, on 3D. Looks so much nicer. We have the option to select total volume or volume delta, which is the buy minus the sell volume. So I can change that for the volume display. The size of the volume dots, as you see that they're changing in the background, I like to make them a little bit bigger. So let's go make them like just like that. Transparency. They seem to be fine to me. I can make them even darker or lighter. I kind of like them. That seems like a good transparency for me. Clustering, smart clustering. I don't mess with this. There's more information. If you want to dive deeper into the knowledge base, you can look more into it. I like to leave it as smart and not want to mess with that. So I'm going to leave those settings as is. Minimal displayed volume 1, minimal trade size 1. And that's fine. We can adjust those if you want to in the future. We can have options for large trades alert, which is kind of cool. I don't know if you can hear it, but it's now speaking to me in the background. But we can change the size, the filters, the voice filter, minimum trade size, all that stuff. So that's kind of cool. So if you're sitting here and you're like, hey, I want to only see when we get, a minimum trade size of 100 or 1,000 or whatever, then you can set those levels, or you can set that in the filter for the voice to kind of alert you in case you're just, doing other stuff in the background. All of these, we have options to customize inside the heat map. Boom, there's a lot of customizations in here. Highly recommend if you want to customize or add different features that you go ahead and do so. Personally, the candlesticks, way too much. I like to look at Bookmap to see beyond the candlestick, so I don't really care. Like I'm usually looking at a candlestick chart on my platform in front of me anyway, and so Bookmap is on the right-hand side, usually on a different screen, so I don't need candlesticks. Like I already got the candlesticks, I'm good. So you have options to configure different studies and whatnot here on that section. Now, the add-on section I want to get to, and I think we'll cover that here in a second. But before we get into the add-ons, let's talk liquidity. Let's talk CVD. Let's talk about what's on the right-hand side, and then we'll get into this. So, bare bones, like if we're just looking at a Bookmap chart, we look at these volume dots, we look at liquidity, and we're like, what's going on? Well, think of this as if you are accustomed to level 2 in the past. Think of this as like in-depth level 2. So what I'm looking at now is levels where buyers and sellers and really just think of orders are stacking up. I wish we can say, oh, there's a ton of orders and a ton of buyers right here. Well, that's not necessarily like a guarantee. There could be sell stops and buy stops and whatnot. So there's just a lot of orders. All we know, a lot of orders stacking up here. Could be a lot of buyers. However, we can also see that we can see breakout traders or, breakdown traders looking to get in on a sell stop or something like that. It's possible as well. So a lot of orders and liquidity at these levels mean that, hey, like we can see a lot of exchanging of shares, okay? Or contracts or whatnot if it's futures. And then we see these deeper, darker reds show that that's the larger areas of liquidity. Areas where we have darker colors, like these darker or even lighter shades, where there's not just kind of light blue or yellow, lower liquidity, but still higher than the dark blues and blacks that we see in the background. And that also transfers to the right-hand side. If you look at where it says COB on the right-hand side, then there's SVP. SVP is session range volume profile, and COB stands for current order book. So where the current orders are stacking up. So right now you see like COB essentially is going to take the liquidity that you see right here and just depict that with these big, I guess you want to call them blocks, if you will. at certain price points. And that's where there's a lot of orders stacking up. So you've got some orders up here around the 235. You've got some right here at around, what is this, 235.50. And then you've got a lot, a ton of orders stacking up on the order book at 236. Some below, some above, but are right around that 236. And then you've got some more down around 233. But kind of in between where we are right now, like really where the market's been, or where Tesla's been ranging, right, from this recent push to the upside and the recent push to the downside. Like there's some big orders here and there's some big orders here, but not a lot in between. There's some right here at this 235. We tend to see that on stocks at whole price or, whole round price dollar levels. So something to keep in mind. But that's when we look at Bookmap from this perspective, understand that these are areas where buyers and sellers orders are stacking up. And if we break through them, we could see potentially a nice move higher or lower. And we also will probably need to see higher volume in order to break through them. And so that's what you kind of see here. We have this big area of liquidity and we took some big volume dots, and the big volume dots mean more buyers. We took those big volume dots to break through it, then eventually sold back off and then pushed through, took some bigger volume dots to break through there. And the same thing happened there. So that's what liquidity really in a nutshell is. Now, if I bring this up here, the CVD, cumulative volume delta. This is going to take buy volume and subtract sell volume, essentially, via these big volume dots, or aggressive sellers, if you will. And so when this number is substantially negative because of what happened at the open. But if I were to go to if I zoom in on the chart and look at a different time frame and look at a different time horizon, this number is going to be, or this chart might look a little bit different. But CVD being negative says we got some downside pressure here on Tesla. But what I like to look at for the CVD is the trend. So if CVD is trending up and price action is trending up, we're kind of going the same way. But if CVD happens to be trending down and we see a bounce back up in price, let's see if I can zoom out to show you a better example, right? Now these volume dots are pretty big. If CVD, for example, is trending down, right, and we get these bounce backs in price to the upside, it's not showing that we've got a ton of aggressive buyers. That seems to be on low volume, which it was with these little smaller volume dots. Wouldn't be surprised to see a continuation to the downside. And so that's how kind of CVD works. Now, again, you can interpret this and view this however you see fit, but I'm just kind of giving you an example of its cumulative volume delta. So it's really showing you totally here what's going on. We take aggressive buyers, aggressive sellers, or we take buyers, sellers, and we subtract the sellers from the buyers, and we get a number. Again, a negative means we've got more sellers and potentially more pressure to the downside on the given day, and the positive, vice versa. So that's what we can see at the bottom of our screen. Right-hand side, we talked about the COB, the current order book, okay? SVP, session range volume profile. This is essentially a volume profile indicator. If you're aware or have heard about or seen or used volume profile indicators, I love them. It just shows you where we have seen the most exchange of shares, contract, etc., and at what price points. So you'll notice that, yes, there's a lot of orders up here at 236, but we haven't traded up there very much today. We've actually traded the most around this area right here, 234, and around this 235. You've seen the most volume exchanged there, and then down here towards 233. That's where the most volume has been exchanged. And price tends to move faster through areas where we don't have these volume nodes, these kind of spikes in the volume profile, tends, and may consolidate more or need some power, aggressive buyers or sellers, to break through these areas or these higher volume nodes where we see price, or we see a lot of volume on the volume profile. Okay, so in a nutshell, we've covered the basics to Bookmap. Now I want to dive a little bit deeper into the add-on features. So if I go back here, configure add-ons. Now I don't have everything able to be selected, but this is where you can select different add-ons. Now what I'm going to go down and do really quick is I just want to go back here to Bookmap, and I want to pull up, let's see, they've got some good community, they've got some good education on Bookmap, but I do want to go down, and if I were to pull up, let's go to the pricing and packages. Here is where I again, like I will always say, I recommend if you're looking to buy something like this, again, you can get in for free. There's a free option to test things out, see how it works. You get access to the heat map, volume dots, CVD, volume profile columns. Then you can't, essentially what we're going to cover in terms of the add-ons, you'd have to go up to a different level But I always recommend the yearly options. I know that could be a big upfront cost for some people, but I recommend, because you're going to always save on these types of things. I always do that. If I'm paying for something, like I always go for the yearly if I can, if I know that I'm going to use it. And it could be even a write-off depending upon your tax situation. So just be aware of that. So when we cover some of these things, you may not have access to them. You may have access to them. It depends. So let's jump back really quick and go to configure add-ons. So for example, Chase is a trading strategy. So if I wanted to allow that, it would be a trading strategy that I'm allowing. There's options to have stops on the chart, which are super nice. Liquidity Tracker Pro, we can get into this. If I pick this up and pop in here, we can smooth out some of the lines. We can see some more data at the bottom of our screen. There's a lot more complicated pieces to this. I'm not going to dive into all of this. This is not for beginners as we dive deeper into Liquidity Tracker Pro, but there's a lot more inside of here. Absorption indicator, a sweeps indicator, market pulse, all of these that we can look at and add, customize in the add-on section of Bookmap. Just be aware what you have access to and what your plan allows you to add to your Bookmap charts. Now, one last thing I do want to mention, if you go to the add instrument section and you're like, okay, I don't really know what symbols to type and all this stuff, there's actually a quick little click here button. That'll be the way to add symbols. It'll tell you all the codes for the month. It'll tell you for what you want to pull up, how you would enter that in order to view the price action on Bookmap, depending upon what data feeds you're looking at. And it's very straightforward. Again, they really do a great job in giving you a lot and making it very easy to find this information. So again, I'll go back here to the knowledge base. If you are curious or you want more information or have some further questions, this is something that you can add that I'll leave in the video description box down below. Thanks so much for watching. That is a beginner's guide to Bookmap. We have other videos on Bookmap going a bit deeper, and if you've got more questions, we can certainly dive deeper in the future to other aspects of the platform. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure you are subscribed. Leave a like if this video is helpful. Consider sharing it, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.